chill.
Daddies, welcome back to another week into this wonderful life that we all live. I feel like I could be Mr. Rogers right now, welcoming you to the neighborhood. Although I'm not going to dress like he does, nor if I live a life like him, I'd be happy. I hope you would be too, but hopefully that's nowhere near for any of us. Daddies, I don't know what you're doing right now, where you're at, but put everything down, stop all else, stop in traffic if you need to, and get ready for the next hour. Maybe not an hour, 40 minutes of your favorite time of the week. The Podfathers are here with you, not just your commish, but I got the ass and the butt with me. How we doing, fellas?
Sorry, I almost fell asleep with that boring-ass intro. Oh my gosh, let's get the boys excited! I know Seb's probably not feeling the best given his last week, so Aaron, maybe we should have kicked this thing off, because getting that dub, the first thing you said when I hopped on this call today, you said, how's it feel to be a winner, Blake? How's it feel to be a winner?
I mean, it feels great. I mean, the three of us, we're sitting with 3, 2, and 2 daddies. However, I think Blake and I are sitting with, coming off the 140 bomb and a 137 bomb, right? Top 2 scorers in week 4. We're feeling pretty good, right? And Kamish is unfortunately on a 2-loss streak. But
yeah, sorry about starting that for you.
I've just learned to not blow your load too early, So let's see what happens next week.
Not only that, if we were going based on points for only, we would be, Aaron, you and I would both be making the playoffs right now. So that also feels, pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's an interesting year. I think we've been analyzing it. We're super analyzed, all of us. We've been analyzing what our point totals, what our records have looked like this year. And we're seeing some significant trends, a little bit different than different years. In terms of scoring, we have no undefeated daddies. It's week 4. No 4-0 team is the first time in the Draft Daddies 5 years that nobody's been sitting at 4-0. And again, I think that the league is as even as we've seen it through 4 weeks ever. The top of the league is at 454 points scored, and then the top 11 scorers are within 50 or so points of that, over 400. So there is one significant outlier, but Aaron, as me and you both do some work in data analytics, I think that we would exclude him from this study because he is a true outlier. As we said last week in a podcast that maybe did not make it to your ears, Jackson is at 282 points, which is an average of 70.5 per game. The lowest scoring total ever for a season averaged around 80 points per game. So Jackson has a lot of work to do to rectify the situation here. Speaking of the neighborhood and Malik Neighbors, we lost a couple knees this week. So it might be tough for some of these guys at the bottom to make some move.
I don't want to say that Jack can't pull his way out of this thing, but I'm just saying there has to be some kind of karmatic justice going on here, given where his season is, and he's being such a within a couple hour shot. But I'm just trying to say, and Glenn lost, and we'll talk about this, I think, a little bit, or at least Seb, you will in the blog, but Glenn lost with the 3rd highest score of the week, a really good score. I'm just saying, if you need the draft daddy karma, you got to show up on draft day. I think that's what we're really getting down to. And you got to read the blogs, you got to listen to the pods. You're not going to get those wins unless you're doing those things. And, I don't have a whole lot of data to back it up right now. I'm going on feels, boys, but those feels are very real.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you going off the thoughts, unless you get Josh Allen while not being at the draft. I think that's not doing pretty well. So we'll see how that shakes out this year. We had a couple daddies not make it. Jack's not doing great. Glenn's not doing great. Keegs is a little all over the place too, not doing great. I don't know. We'll see if it's a trend. We'll see if it's going forward.
Yeah, I mean, if we aggregate here a little bit, daddies that missed the draft are combined 2-10 on the year, right? We've got, and Glenn's doing a lot of heavy lifting there with the 2 wins at 433 points for, right? So shows to go ya. You don't go to draft day, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah.
I do think there's something that needs to be talked about too with the person that wins the combine, right? The person that wins the combine has historically not done super great either.
Yeah, I will speak to that for myself. Who was it the year before that? Who won the
Evan.
Evan was he did so poorly. He didn't
R.I.P.
even come back. Yeah, R.I.P. And that was our first combine year, right? I think it was. Yeah, because that was the
Yes.
true combine. Yeah, yep. Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe you don't want to win the combine.
Maybe you tank the combine.
Maybe you tank the combine. I don't know, daddies, pod fathers. I feel like I didn't get enough credit for our thumbnail last week, and I'm going to call it out here. I thought it was super fun. A little spin on.
So speaking of our daddies, who have had a lot of injury issues, who are sitting at the bottom, we lost Tyreek and Malik. Man, there's just bad luck right there if you're an Eek. But Tyreek and Malik Neighbors, and we lost James Conner last week, right? There's some significant injuries. And we don't know what the situation is with Lamar and his hamstring, and, when's CD going to come back? And unfortunately, Jackson's got two of those guys. But this is going to be a really big waiver week, as was last week. And, we talk a lot about the depth of this league and how hard it is to play the waivers. But I know that this is going to be a big waiver week for a lot of people. So guys like Woody Marks and Kenneth Gainwell are big waiver targets this week that are already rostered in our league. But I'm really curious to see where this week goes. Tomorrow morning, this is being recorded on the 30th of September. So tomorrow's Wednesday morning. Who picks up who, right? Who's making the claim for Darius Slayton now that Malik's out? What about Malik Washington replacing Tyreek, or Darren Waller catching 2 touchdowns? So I'm intrigued to see what waivers look like this week. And given the state of some of these teams, we're going to need to see some significant moves, or still no trades. Well, no real big trades, even though I threw out some offers this past week. I got really close. I'm going to tell you guys, Matt and I were very close to a trade this past week. And I had offered Marvin Harrison Jr. and Javonte Williams for Justin Jefferson and Trey Benson. And Matt said that was a reasonable trade, and he was this close to doing it. I don't know. How do you daddies feel about that? Straight up, Trey Benson, Justin Jefferson for Javonte and Marvin Harrison. And what I'll tell you is we both did really well with the trade this week. All of those guys, honestly, probably were about a wash on points between the two of us.
Yeah, I think that would have played out pretty well. I mean, you're taking a risk on a couple guys, hoping that Trey Benson pops off, hoping that Marvin Harrison can find some sort of success in the NFL with a horrible quarterback. And so you're taking a risk there, but that's what you have to do sometimes to pick up wins, pick up points. I think it would have been a pretty solid trade.
Yeah, I agree. I love a good trade. There's big on the upside. That the one thing about that trade is it does feel pretty level set. Maybe it's because we have the hindsight of what happened last week, but I don't know long term which side that trade the favor falls onto.
There's risks on us Cardinals,
it feels
right?
pretty even.
We're just essentially trading rights to the risk of you have a risky wide receiver, I have a risky running back now, right? So
yeah.
Anyways,
I threw a few out to Vic, trying to bait him into a little running back, and nothing. He didn't even. I barely got a response on the text, let alone. And then before you know it, he's picking up Justice Hill, who got 2 touchdowns. But I don't know how he's gonna fare going forward. He might wish and Isaiah Pacheco finally got his, because that's frankly who I was trying to pat off to him. He finally got a few points. At least he broke 5, which is, a win at this point, it seems like. But, I don't know what hurts more, being in Glenn's position where he was, had the 3rd highest points scored and lost to you by what, 2.5 or so, 3 points. So being the 2nd highest and losing your game, or being kind of right in the middle and losing by less than a full point, which is what happened. And it kind of came down to a chuck down play, which is what happened to the Targeting Crawdaddies, who would have theoretically, given that we knew that mine and Kirby's matchup was done, Peyton was the only one vying for that 4-0 spot, and Rice Krispie pulled off the W. Targeting Crawdaddies have a tough week coming up this week, and they're facing one of our fellow podfathers, Aaron Zitch. How are you feeling going into this week, man?
Yeah, this is a 3-1 versus 2-2. Again, 3-1's coming off of a loss with the Crawdaddies, and they were boiled last week, and we're coming off of a really big win and feeling good with a Genty. I'm not going to say resurgence, but a Genty surgence. He's finally come to fruition what he could do. This is unfortunately a massive bye week for the Crawdaddies. We got DeAndre Swift and Roma Dunze out, in addition to no more Malik Neighbors. So this wide receiver core that was some of the top dogs in the league is now being commandeered by Jawan Jennings if he plays. Although if Jawan Jennings plays, he is likely the only option for anyone on the San Francisco offense. Jawan Jennings, Joshua Palmer, and Trey Tucker are the 3 receivers on the Crawdaddies team. Now, I love Breece Hall, especially given the Braylon Allen injury last week, and then Jordan Mason has been relatively productive. But we're also going to see a tight end pick up here with Tucker Kraft on bye. It's a significant bye week for the Crawdaddies, and not a significant bye week at all for my team. And again, coming off a win, playing with confidence, we're going to see, I think, a second loss in a row for the Crawdaddies, in my opinion. I think that it's not going to be relatively close, given that I don't think that there's very high ceilings for a lot of those wide receivers. Trey Tucker can blow up. Trey Tucker is very explosive. However, again, the Indy defense has been pretty good. Granted, they gave up a lot of points to Puka this past week, but the Indy defense has been pretty good this year. And I don't think Trey Tucker is going to continue to see, 2 touchdowns on 5 receptions, or, he's had a lot of touchdowns on very few receptions. So again, Josh Allen, you never know when he's going to go for 40, but this year, Josh Allen and, Patrick Mahomes has actually kind of had a resurgence. And so I think our quarterbacks are closer than you might think. So I'm going with myself to improve to 3-2.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. You said it pretty well there. Peyton just unfortunately has a perfect storm of bye weeks and injuries that are just absolutely ravaging his team right now. His one saving grace would have kind of been probably Tucker Kraft, hoping that he could have a big week, and him being in that tight end position, he's been kind of a workhorse for him. You never know where Breece Hall's going to really land. He's only averaging 10 points. He could go into the higher end, and Josh Allen, same thing. Expect Josh Allen to have a big week, but I don't think that, especially when you look at your opponents that you have across the board, you've got a couple Jacksonville, a mixture of the New Yorks and the Titans, Las Vegas, like teams that I would be scared if I was facing you this week, regardless of any buys or anything. And I think this is going to be two losses in a row, but I don't think that this is the end of the Crawdaddies by any means.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of excitement right now on your team, Aaron. Hopefully we can continue that. There's not proven consistency outside of maybe Jake Ferguson and Javonte Williams, who had, again, a slightly down week this last week. So not a lot of proven consistency, but I think it will come this year, and next week or this week could be the start of that for you. So I think you take this. There's some tough defenses in the areas where the Crawdaddies could pop off, and so I don't think there's enough this week. Speaking of enough this week, and some excitement, I think there's going to be a lot of attention for this next matchup in this New York Giants New Orleans game, with the Dayton Doodles and the Konkani Laddie, as there's 2 rookies just taking the league by storm right now. Maybe not league, but just they're exciting, right? Jackson Dart and Cam Scatabo have just been this exciting tandem. We saw them first in action this last week as Jackson Dart took a lot of rushing opportunities. I wouldn't say that he took them away from Scatabo. I think you're going to see that potential expand as team or defenses look to stop Dart a little bit more. And so it might free up some lanes for Scatabo, or the same thing with Dart a little bit. And without having that deep threat of neighbors, hopefully the box is not packed too tightly. But, Jackson Dart and Drake May is an exciting matchup there. That running back matchup with Henry and Hampton and Barkley and Scatabo, both vets and a rookie, that both could wash. Henry and Barkley, I saw some stat that just said both of them are horribly inefficient this year. Neither one are getting the top tier opportunities. Why Baltimore doesn't have Henry with the ball on the 1 yard line every single time, not sure, but not a lot of excitement. And you would say the same thing at receiver, right? BTJ, a little bit more opportunity. Ladd McConkey does he exist? Has he had sex with Madison Beer? What is going on? We don't know. George Pickens and Cortland Sutton, some excitement. Pickens obviously blew up. You just don't see 30-point games repeated very often, but Sutton has a tough matchup versus Philadelphia. A good tight end matchup. Jameson Williams, who has not been consistent. Ricky Pearsall dealing with a little bit of an injury. This is a tough matchup, and Aaron, I know that you mentioned this was potentially a matchup of the week. If I wasn't just in that position, it really could go either way, which is really unfortunate for me sitting at 2-2. I'd really love to pick up a win this week. I think I squeak by. I think it's super close. I don't know off the top of my head if there's a Monday night matchup here, but I'd love to sweat something out on Monday night and come out on top.
Yeah, it's going to come down to BTJ on Monday night with Jaguars versus Kansas City. However, I mean, that's a pretty reliant goose egg. this year, right? BTJ isn't doing too much. I love the young quarterback matchup here. You said it all with Henry and Barkley. I love the young running back matchup we've got too with Scadaboo and Hampton. And then, who thought George Pickens would be our feature wide receiver among this group? Depending if Ricky Pearsall plays or not, we might see, a Travis Kelce flex play. I don't know. And, plug somebody in there. I'd love to see it. But I agree with you. I think this is really close. These teams are very, very similar, right? You've got the young quarterback. You've got the historically dominant running back. You've got a rookie running back. You've got these young receivers who were dominant last year and are no longer, right? These
second-year receivers, yeah.
These are mirrored teams in many ways. And so I really think that this is a close matchup. But I would love to see Kamish pick up a kicker on the waivers this week because goddamn Joey Sly is one of the worst kickers I've ever seen in my life.
Whoever I pick up is going to go for a dud this week, too.
And Joey Sly's probably not 15. Probably 15.
Well, I don't think Joey Sly will. 0 for 2. Got you -2 points last week.
Yeah.
And he was a replacement for Jake Bates, who I believe had a pretty big week, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
he did.
Joey's going to have a great week when I drop him.
Absolutely. So despite the Joey Sly, I think that's edging me a little bit more in the Doodles' favor. I think that this is George Pickens' career day, like it was last week. So I'm edging with George. So this is going with the Doodles for me, maybe in a 2-point matchup, right? This could come down to, Brian Thomas Jr. getting 1 catch for 8 yards and winning this week. So I'm going to edge with the Doodles.
Yeah. You're really, really focused on edging there. And I want to edge us all into convincing Seb to go ahead and put Travis Kelce in that flex spot because that would be your Monday night game. It's the only Monday night, but that would be a fun one for you. And who knows? They've got Jacksonville. Could be a week for him to have himself a week. But that being said, the only thing I want to call out here is Cortland Sutton. I don't know. I mean, I think it was probably early on expected, like, hey, he's got a chance to have himself a good season. But Cortland Sutton seems to be one of your reliable workhorses on your entire squad there, Seb. And I don't know if I would not have predicted that early on in the season, him being, he's position rank 11, especially given how week 1 kind of played out. I don't think I would have thought that. And I mean, George Pickens, same situation. So 2 kind of showy wide receivers there. But when it comes down to it I am feeling this one going Seb's way. And I think Saquon is going to have a big week. And because he is, how many did he get for you last week? I got you 15, but so right at his average, give or take. But against that Denver defense, I think that he shows up this week, gets those goal line, maybe not goal line touches because of the goddamn tush push. But nonetheless, I'm going for you on this week, Seb. And assuming you get a new kicker, yeah. Because you're going up against the number 2 technically this year, but we all know Brandon Aubrey is the number 1 kicker in the league.
In all of our hearts, too. So, makes sense. Appreciate the love.
Yep. And, I will say that selfishly that I'm hoping you kind of get the win so you can level out this playing field, get him to 3-2, get yourself to 3-2 because that's out of townies. I would love to get myself to 3-2 and bring this other gentleman down to 3-2 as well. And this next week, it's myself versus that gentleman I was talking about trying to get a running back, trying to hand him Isaiah Pacheco on a silver platter. I just wanted A.J. Brown for him, no big deal. Apparently, I think I would have come out on top of that one at this point, or he would have. But hey, we're moving past it. And right now, as it sits with no changes, Lamar not playing next week, allegedly, it looks like he's doubtful. I had my questions in the game. I thought that maybe the game was just going so poorly that Lamar decided he was just going to take himself out, but maybe it is a real injury. And that's concerning for Vic. He's got to have him shaking a bit. I mean, I do. And on the flip side, I've been running with Caleb and it's been working. It's been okay. It's at least a lot more fun for me, but I'll have Bo Nix in there against Philly this week. Don't love that. As it stands right now, I have my defense going against my quarterback, which I'm pretty avidly against. That being said, with Lamar being out right now, as it stands with no roster changes, which there will be, but the projected totals are myself just short of 100 and Vic at 65. And that is with only the Lamar fill-in that needs to be done there. So, projections not looking so great for this week for Vic, and Vic being 3-1 speaks a lot to the role that Lamar, and we talked about this last week, that quarterbacks can play in this league. But I'm happy with where my team is at. I do have a couple buys, Drake London being on bye, like I said, Caleb and who I guess all the Green Bay Packers were gonna get a bunch of points this last week, but Romeo Doubs with his 3 touchdowns, man, just really RIP, RIP, RIP to Kirby last week, him being on the bench. But that being said, I have the bench spots that, the floor might be low, but the ceiling is just as high with some of these guys that I'm filling in, like Stephon and I guess Pacheco. So I'm going with myself on this one, and I don't think it matters who he slots into that QB position. I feel pretty good going into this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now Cooper Rush is slated to be the replacement for the Ravens, and I'd say that's not really a juicy pickup to fill the slot of a Lamar Jackson. So I'm not expecting a whole lot of production out of.
But for Vic, it might be. It might be tasty for Vic.
He might be reliant upon the Baltimore pickup, but I don't know. So I mean, we've talked about Vic and his running backs before, and again, Jalen Warren is on bye, but also is still injured, and we don't know what his status is. But Vic is going to be rocking with Chris Rodriguez and Justice Hill. Justice Hill likely to not be as productive without the threat of Lamar. Chris Rodriguez, he kind of lucked out with the Justice Hill play last week, but we'll see if these guys end up getting more than 5 points this week. And AJ Brown has been a dud this year, but on the flip side, he lucked into some wide receiver value with Jalen Waddle and Wan'Dale Robinson after injuries this week. So despite all that, I think, having CMC, having ETN, both of which are, having great years, and JSN has been productive, albeit consistently productive, but not a blow up scorer yet. He's consistent. And Stephon Diggs had his first 100-yard game with New England. So I think there's a lot more potential on Blake, your side. Now that you've put Pacheco back into your lineup, he's gonna be a dud, that. But even despite the Pacheco dud, that is inevitable. I don't think Vic is gonna get a win here. Vic being at 3-1, again, he's had some good matchups, but last week didn't put up points, and I think will continue to not put up points unless some changes are made. So I think this is a Blake week through and through.
I do just want to also call out the Rashad White bench that I have right now with Bucky Irving.
Value
that is one that I'm watching. I'm watching that real closely because he is very, very capable, and Tampa Bay has some trust in him, even if he's failed them at certain times in the past. And just let me just say that Rashad White will fall into that flex spot so fast if Bucky Irving's not going to play, and Isaiah Pacheco will be right back on the bench scoring touchdowns.
I agree with that. The only thing is that it would be a Sean Tucker, Rashad White committee
split.
If the case. Yeah, but I
think that's still better than the Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco.
I take that over Pacheco all day.
Yep.
Agreed.
Is that an amphetamine across the board? I haven't gotten one of those in a long time.
Amphetamines across the board. Speaking of amphetamines across the board, I think our boy Jackson's going to be looking for a little bit of something to ease his pain.
Some kind of stimulant. Yeah.
Something. And he's got his former landlord and roommate here, the Bald Bison, coming in hot off of a victory. But we've got a really tough week for Jackson, given we are...
Can I interject real quick and just say that most weeks right now are really tough weeks for Jack?
They are mostly tough weeks for Jackson. But in particular, I think this is another tough week because any of the wide receivers we thought he would have potential on draft day are not going to be playing this week. That includes CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, and DJ Moore on bye. All for different reasons, right? But as of right now, Ted McMillan is wide receiver 1, and we're going to have to see some pickups on the waiver wire from Jackson to fill in some spots. And he was already not in a great position. So probably we'll see Bill Krosky-Merritt sneak up in there, and I don't know what to expect, but CJ Stroud and Kyler Murray, to be honest, trash quarterbacks across the board. That's a wash for me. But Chase Brown and Nick Chubb might have lost the backfield to Woody Marks this past week. Chase Brown is maybe god awful at football. I don't know, but he has not been the Chase Brown that we expected this year, and is not getting the touches that we kind of thought he would. So, I don't expect to see much production from the running backs or the wide receivers. And if we're not seeing production there, where are we seeing production? So Bald Bison, again, my hopeful trade partner, his wide receivers are clicking now. Tony Pollard value has been decent, but James Cook is sitting at our running back 1 right now. And again, he's got the value in Trey Benson, despite that Cardinals offense being mostly anemic. So I don't think this is particularly close. And I don't think that you guys will either. Again, Jackson, we continue to say it. we need some changes. I don't know what those are, but it's gonna have to be something big. So
Yeah, I'll make mine sweet and short. I'm going Bison.
I'm gonna go with Bull Bison on this one. I think it's pretty clear that they're gonna take this one. But I would appreciate if we had a little more smack talk from these guys.
I would, yeah, I agree.
A little more smack talk. Hey, in this next matchup, we've got two that Glenn was real quiet until he secured not winning, until he secured the loss. He was real quiet last week, but then he made sure he got his 2 cents in. We got G-Train Wrath versus Team Keegs. Kamish, how you feel about this one? This is could be another low-scoring affair.
Yeah, I'd be curious if Glenn watches football on Sunday if it's not the Browns, right? Does he turn football on? Any thoughts?
There's no way.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Keegs probably
because
does.
I think he's spending too long trying to find an illegal stream that he can find the Browns on to actually watch any other football.
I mean, he lives in New York, so I don't know. Do they even really care about football too much there? I guess I don't know.
Given their teams, I don't think they do at all.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Dart though. That's exciting. Anyways, looking at the Rats and Team Keegs, I think Keegs will appreciate having Jaden Daniels back into the lineup this week. Aaron and I were talking a little earlier this show that we think Team Keegs is a lot better than what they've seen. It's been kind of unfortunate so far this season. A lot of consistent value. I wouldn't say a lot of top-end value, but a lot of consistent value from Team Keegs, and that's without Jaden Daniels 2 weeks. And you have Keenan Allen on your bench. You have Zach Charbonnet on your bench. You have Woody Marks on your bench. Like, there's talent to come around. He's just got to put it all together in his lineup during 1 week. Can Jamar Chase be any sort of efficient without Joe Burrow is going to be the question long term for him against a Detroit lineup this week. I think Detroit blows them out of the water. I don't think it's even a close matchup with Cincinnati. So there's going to be a little bit of struggle, but maybe that means David Montgomery's back to scoring. I think he scored 2 points last week after 32 the week before. So some consistent play that I think Keegs will bring to the table this week. On the other side, when you're looking at the Rats, Puka Nacua has looked incredible. Garrett Wilson looked really good. You have Justin Fields on your bench who's projected 21.8. That might be the most for a quarterback. I think he's going to get thrusted into that lineup with Jordan Love being on bye. So bringing back that stack with Justin Fields rushing floor against that horrible Dallas defense, it's going to be a close one, closer than expected. Rats, I think, are going to struggle. I think that Glenn's biggest issues, like we just talked about with not watching football, I think when you're managing a team with injuries or buys, it's really tough to do. I think there's going to be just too many, it's just defensive flex and the quarterback position. I still think there's too many question marks. He's going to struggle which one to put where, and I think Team Keegs with Jaden Daniels picks up another one this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are really good insights. I think to your point, the top end maybe isn't as exciting for Keegs, but having Puka Nacua, who's I saw a stat saying he's on target for like 2,100 yards at this point, right? He's securely looking at the receiving title so far this year, averaging 22. And again, a lot of the pieces on the Rats side, despite Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs being on bye, Josh Jacobs being our running back 7 coming off of a great week. I think that he has good pieces to plug in there, right? With Justin Fields and potentially, a Cooper Kupp who is coming off of, I guess he's not coming off of a decent week, but Cooper Kupp or Jerry Jeudy, are not horrible pieces to plug in. Devontae Smith is going to be just as bad as whoever's in the Rats' flex positions. I think I'm more excited about the top end of the Rats versus the top end of the Keegs. So I'm going to go with the Rats this week when he just put up 135. So we'll see if he can come off that with his Packers on bye and continue to perform.
Yeah. I think I'm inclined to go with you on this one, Aaron. I think I'm leaning toward the Rats. That might be me giving Glenn just a little bit of sympathy. He might be getting a little bit of a sympathy vote just for what happened last week. But I'm curious, like when you go back and look at, I'm curious if you throw in, and I was just looking, he'd have at least one win, maybe two. If you put Josh Allen on Keegs' team, where would he be? If you left everything else the same and you put Josh Allen there, it really is just week 1 that you see a big difference, but potentially last week too. Nonetheless, I just think it's an interesting stat to look at, given that he doesn't have his star QB this week. But yeah, gonna have to, I think Justin Fields, I think they're probably anticipating him having a rushing touchdown there. I can't really anticipate how he would have, projected 22 points without it. But it's a pretty good likelihood of that happening. We've seen that happen in the past, and he's capable of putting up those kind of points. So that being said, I think he's getting a sympathy vote in here, but I think we're going to have 2 0-5 teams at the end of this week. I think we finished this week with 2 0-5 teams, and these next 2 teams, this might be, oh, man, is it just me, or does it kind of feel like we have some not so matchups of the week this week? Like we have a lot of maybe it's because it's the first week of buys, but it doesn't really impact much of these 2 teams. We have the Chicago Dogs and Rice Krispie, two teams that are just struggling to keep their heads above water, but they're not being pushed down from the very top. They're not being held underwater, but they definitely are asking for a life float or a flotation device, as you would say right now. Go into this next week, Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield. Baker is, you can really count on him to really to show up and make it interesting, right? At least to watch. It's got to be fun. We always talk about how you kind of watch your quarterback games because, they're active every play. If you have Baker Mayfield like the Chicago Dogs do, it's fun. It's a fun at least to watch. He's a fun energy. But Dak Prescott going up against the Jets, Dak has proven that he can still score points even though the rest of his team might be shit. Week 1 was really not a good. I didn't realize that with that blowout. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the week by week. With the blowout that they had against Chicago, against the Bears, he still only scored 12 fantasy points, which is wild to see. In the running back game, Devontae Chan has to be the most consistent running back, I feel like, in the league this year, even though he's position rank 8. He's averaging, what is it? Yeah, 16, 17 points per game. And that has to feel real good to maybe not the most consistent, but one of the most consistent. And going up against weird, like RB versus RB here, Chicago Dogs all the way. Xavier Worthy is back and in the lineup for Rice Krispie this week, which has got to be something exciting. And Christian Kirk is going to be making a loud appearance, he hopes, against Baltimore. I think that in the flex position, that versus he's got Chris Olave in the flex against the man. Yeah, this is just another kind of rough matchup. Maybe not as rough as some of the others, but that being said, I'm going to give this one to the Chicago Dogs. I think that there's a little bit more upside when you look at some of these matchups, but I think it's going to be a close one.
Close one for sure. Couldn't disagree with you more on who you're picking, though. So I'm going Chris all the way. Dak's coming off of a 30 bomb. Having any piece of the Dallas offense right now is pretty valuable. Dallas's offense,
which doesn't make sense.
I know it really doesn't. Even without CD, right? It feels good to have pieces of the Dallas offense, right? Dak and Baker, I would consider maybe a wash here. Achane and Gibbs, you're going to give that to Gibbs, but Trevion Henderson and RJ Harvey are not turning out to be, valuable assets. Trevion got in the end zone last week, but he has not had the volume that we expect him to have. Amon-Ra, is also kind of the big piece of the Chicago Dogs, but there's not a whole lot else outside of the consistency of Achane and Amon-Ra, right? Terry's been disappointing. Mark Andrews had a 1-2 touchdown game, but now he's got Cooper Rush throwing. Christian Kirk, is maybe the third option with Stroud. And so on Rice Krispie's side, we got Jahmyr Gibbs, Xavier Worthy coming back, had a great game this past week. Jacoby Myers in the Vegas offense, might not be the number one target with Trey Tucker and Genty, but has is expected to do better than maybe he has performed. But you also have Brock Bowers there. So Chris Olave, despite not having a super productive year, is still 5th in target. No, he's 3rd. No, he's tied for 2nd in targets behind Puka. So he is still up at the top in terms of volume. And so I think the week is going to come where Chris Olave breaks out a little bit more. So I think I like the potential here for Rice Krispie more than I do the Dogs. So I'm going with Chris.
Yeah, I think it's more than potential this week. Xavier Worthy kind of proved himself last week coming back on the show. I think he has another big week. I think studs kind of match, whether it's Amon-Ra and Achane or Dak and Gibbs. I take that as a wash. I really think it comes down to this tight end matchup with Mark Andrews and Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers, he's still tight end 11, but he hasn't been, who Chris drafted has. I think he makes a statement this week with a little bit more attention on the backfield with Genty having a bigger week this last week. So Bowers is going to have a little bit more opportunity, and Isaiah likely getting inserted into that Baltimore offense a little bit more takes away opportunities from Mark Andrews. So I think Brock Bowers is the deciding factor here, and they take the win. But now that we are done talking about that horrible, low-scoring, likely matchup. Fellas, do you know what time it is?
7:16.
7:16, you're right.
7:16. Yeah, we need to wait, I think, another 5, 4, 3. Okay, yep. It is now match of the week time, baby. Let's go.
We timed that up so well.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, it was really well done, guys.
I mean, to the second, pretty much.
Boys, I think we've alluded to it this whole time, right? The field is pretty tight in terms of the league this year. However, I think we could probably all agree we've seen two, I'm not going to call them dominant because they both have a loss, but we've seen two teams that maybe have stood ahead above the rest, right? Maybe not head and shoulders above the rest, but they're just a little bit higher than the rest. And I think they're both living on, a star running back and having some other studs in addition to those guys to round out their team, right? These are two relatively healthy teams that have, been some of the top scorers in the league, our first and our third top scorers in the league. We've got the Muncie Monstars and Sir Cox-a-Lot coming in for our matchup of the week. And I really love this matchup because these are kind of our two most dominant teams thus far. But Cox is coming off a loss, right? And Blake alluded to it. Blake put up his top performance. It took the top performance of the week to put down the Cox. But these have been two really productive teams. And I'll start off with the quarterbacks. We've got Jalen Hurts and we've got Justin Herbert. I think we've highlighted both these guys in matchups of the week before, but this last week was the first week that Jalen Hurts did not have a rushing touchdown, and this was maybe Justin Herbert's least productive week. So both these guys coming off weeks which they could have been more productive, but I think I'm always going to give the rushing upside to Jalen Hurts over Justin Herbert in this instance. Justin Herbert's had a great connection with QJ, not as much with Ladd, but Justin Herbert has had, 300 yards twice this year, has been relatively consistent, although this last week threw 2 picks. So I like the Jalen Hurts play more than I like the Justin Herbert play. But really, I think that the next big component I'll throw it over to Seb for is running backs, and maybe particularly the running back that's not going to play.
Yeah, I totally agree. You have Bijan, who's just looked unstoppable. The comment I heard earlier this week was he is the best running back in space. That's why they get him out on some quick passes to the outside. They use him in the passing attack. A lot of the runs are outside zone schemes. He's looked incredible. Fortunately for the Monstars, though, they have a decent replacement, though. There's a lot of teams in the league this year that don't even have a second running back, and so the Monstars are able to put in Kyron Williams and Judkins. And personally, I like Judkins more out of those two running backs. Kyron Williams is kind of hit and miss. His snap share has gone down every week. You would almost say a little bit more touchdown dependence, which hasn't looked great because of the passing they're wanting to do in the red zone lately with that Rams offense. And so I think it would take a lot, and I don't think they're going to be high-scoring matchups on either one of those games for Williams or Judkins, where as you look at Jonathan Taylor and Kenneth Walker, Jonathan Taylor's looked back to Penn State form, rookie season Colts form, pre-injury form. He's looked every bit of the part. I think a big reason why the Colts have had so much success this year. I look for that to continue against Las Vegas. That run defense, I think he'll have another big, consistent game. I think he, if I look at him a little bit more, but he's had 11, 28, 31, 12. So look for him to kind of get more involved and find the end zone again this week. There won't be too many weeks he does not find the end zone. Kenneth Walker should have had a touchdown last week as well. He had a penalty, a personal foul penalty that was dumb, and then he got benched for the rest of the first half. And so he would have found the end zone too. I think he is the consistent workhorse over in Seattle. So look for, I would say at least a 15-point swing on the running back side here. Big weeks over for Sir Cox-a-Lot.
Yeah, I think I might be wrong, but I think if it wouldn't have been for yeah. And you mentioned Kenny Walker missed out on a touchdown opportunity. Jonathan Taylor did too with Adonai Mitchell? Adonai?
Yeah. They call him AD, but yeah.
AD, yeah. And Sir Coxall loves talking about the touchdown opportunities that his team has missed.
Yeah, it does make a lot more fun when you're playing against him and those you watch those happen. But in the wide receiver, he's not missing them in the wide receiver department, at least not with Quentin Johnson. If you would have told me that Quentin Johnson and Justin Herbert would have been the stack to watch out for this year in this league,
Crazy.
I would have told you to shut the fuck up, because I would not have believed that. But I guess Slippery Hands Johnson really put some work in, or got a new glove sponsorship, or something happened in the offseason that he is getting not just deep receptions, he's also getting touchdowns. And last week or 2 weeks ago was the only week that he has not had at least one. He's averaging right around 17 points. That just is mind boggling to me going into the season. I think most people kind of glossed over him. But the other shocker, Uka, he is still is just him and Baker Mayfield. Their connection must be very real. Maybe they found a Madison beer to share or something. I don't know what's going on there for you. But nonetheless, Michael Pittman also has been, I don't know, as a Colts fan, Aaron, I'm curious on your take on this. How do you feel about Michael Pittman? I mean, he's only had one real down week. He's
always been like the worst wide receiver one in the league, right? And I think he's still in that position, except the Colts offense is just better than it has been in the past, right? Daniel Jones has a lot more volume of passes available to him. You know, Alec Pierce is going to catch a 40 bomb and be consistent. You know, A.D. Mitchell's probably getting benched or cut. And so you're going to see, you know, Michael Pittman be Mr. Consistent, right? He's the guy who's going to get you 10 yards on a pass. He's going to, you know, he'll be available when you need him to be available. He's not going to be the guy to go for, you know, 12 receptions, 200 yards and a touchdown, you know, but he will get you maybe 60 and, you know, 6 catches and maybe a touchdown. So a bit touchdown dependent, but I like the prospect of the Colts offense, but, you know, he's never going to be a blow up guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. I'm just curious. I'm always curious as a fan how you perceive some of your key players. But I call this one almost a straight split with Quentin Johnson and Buka being their number ones, and then Pittman and Deebo Samuel has potential, high ceiling. That floor is probably about the same place for those two. So I'm going pretty close to a wash on this.
Yeah, I agree with you. And an area where I don't necessarily think it's a wash here is tight end and flex, which is going to be a really interesting week for both of these teams. One, because we're going to have to see a Kyle Pitts replacement, which Kyle Pitts is out. I don't know what you're supposed to do. I mean, you're kind of SOL on the week, but Kyle Pitts replacement on the waivers for this week. And he's playing Kayshon Boutte in the flex position, which has, you know, is not looking like it's super promising unless we go to a shootout in Buffalo, which, you know, I don't know what to expect. He's not the number one. He's not the number two. And he's probably not the number three considering Hunter Henry's in that offense too. So we might see him play the waivers here for a flex position and a tight end. But what I'll say about the Cox side is that we've been talking about Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving may not play. He was getting an MRI. We don't have much information on that. So on the Cox side, it's probably Jordan Addison or Calvin Ridley. I would say Jordan Addison is higher potential to be in that flex position this upcoming week. I don't love Dalton Schultz or Jordan Addison either. So I do think that no matter what Cox plays, it's going to be better than Boutte and a waiver tight end or waiver tight end and waiver flex option here for Taylor, given we know how thin the waivers are. So I do lean Cox, not heavily because none of these are going to be big scorers, but it is definitely going Cox's way, even with Bucky Irving questionable.
Yeah, with a matchup with so much other excitement, it's, you know, kind of sad when you look at those tight end and flex positions if Bucky's not playing. So yeah, a little sad, underwhelming there. And really not too much excitement when you look at defense and kickers as well. Dicker, the kicker, is just he's great. The Chargers offense has scored a lot. They haven't needed him too much, and so you know, those long field goals have not come into play much this year. And same with the Chargers defense. Again, it blows my mind that Kirby has 4 Chargers positional pieces going every week, but it's working for him right now. Yeah, that Chargers defense against Washington. It's a little bit different if Jane Daniels is back and Marcus Mariota is not playing. Potential for a little bit more scoring action to occur. On the other side, you have the 49ers defense, and then, you know, maybe he's going to pick up Joey Sly this week. I'm not sure, you know, with that kicker position being on by. 49ers going against the Rams. I don't know. I don't really love either one of these. The Chargers thing's working. Picker the Kicker's been cool, I suppose. Close to a wash. I'm probably, gosh, I don't even know. I might even like the pickups a little bit more. Let's just call it a wash.
It is interesting. We have a handful of teams in the league this year that are 1 or 2 team heavy independent, and Mr. Kirby Cox is one of them with those Chargers, and he's got a, if they find success, it seems like he is. And I think they find success this week. I'm giving it to the Cox.
Also giving it to the Cox. I mean, he's looking projected 115, which is the highest in the league this year. Or sorry, in the league this week. Next highest being 109, and most other people hovering around 102, 103, 104, with, a few exceptions, obviously. Given this is a big bye week, Taylor's playing the waivers probably. I think, barring catastrophic blowups for some of these guys, it is a Cox week.
Now here's a bold thing. I think that Cox wins by over half of what Jackson scores.
So if Jackson scores 70, Cox is winning by 35.
Correct.
Okay, I love it. I think that's a great prediction. I'd love to keep doing predictions like this. I called my shot last week with my 120 plus and a Genty breakout. This is Kamish's bold prediction this week. Blake will look forward to yours next week. But Cox is winning apparently by more than half of what Jackson scored. So the precedent is set.
I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty low. That's not all that hot of a take, but fair enough. I mean, fair enough.
35 points, I feel like is a big win.
It's great.
I know, but if you're looking at the stats of this year, that is projected to happen as it is. But you know what? I like it nonetheless, and I think I'd take that money too. I can't, I won't, but I would. Hey, is that a wrap?
That's a wrap. It's a beautiful week to be a draft daddy. It's a beautiful week to be a pod father. It's a beautiful week to be
in the neighborhood.
A beautiful week to be in the neighborhood. A way to wrap it back up. And, week after week, we get closer to some of our draft daddies being real daddies. And we congratulate you and look forward to seeing you sire your young to be NFL football fans. God forbid they be Dallas Cowboy fans or Chicago Bear fans or any of these poverty franchises. But again, despite one loss, it feels good to be a Colts fan this week still. And we're rocking with Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones is rocking with us. Daddies, we're still rocking with you, and we love you, and we miss you, and we can't wait for your ears to be blessed by our sweet lips. And I'll give you one more blessing with those sweet lips here with our send-off. Daddies, we love you so much. We can't wait to get another week under our belts this week with week 5. So, mwah, mwah, we love you.
Daddies, we love you.
We love you. I could sing you a lullaby, but I'm not going to. I'll save that for later.